Hello, you lovely lot, and welcome back to Sabbatical Stories. I'm Bex Thomas, your host, a career transition and sabbatical coach. Today I'm coming to you from the Blue Mountains in Sydney, Australia. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land, the Derek and Gundungurra people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This podcast exists to inspire courage and normalise taking a break from your career. If these conversations resonate, please do follow, rate and share the show. It helps more people discover these stories and really does mean a lot. Today's guest is the wonderful Amy Savage, a nutritionist whose story is a powerful reminder that sometimes a pause chooses you. After a serious motor accident turned her life upside down, Amy went from living a full, thriving life to barely being able to leave the house. Health suddenly became the number one priority, and what followed was a sabbatical that gave her the space to recover, reflect and completely rethink her relationship with work, well-being and what she wanted next. In this episode, Amy also shares practical insights on maintaining your health during a career break, especially when travel and disrupted routines and uncertainty can easily throw us off track. From simple nutrition strategies and supplements to sleep habits and sustainable routines that actually last, Amy's got it all. Are you ready? Let's dive in.
Deep down, you've tried, dig deep, search wide, enjoy your climb, it's all for you.
Hi Amy, and welcome to Sabbatical Stories. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Bex. I'm excited to be here.
My absolute pleasure, and I have wanted to get you on. I think it's been maybe 2 seasons I've been trying to get you on. And full disclosure, Amy and I actually work together and are colleagues. In part of my portfolio career, I still, of course, work in recruitment and work for Oak Tree Talent. And we've actually had Annika on the podcast in season 1 to share from a recruitment perspective what employers really want to know about career breaks. And Amy and I work with Annika at Oak Tree. But as always, I would love to invite you, Amy, to introduce yourself for our listeners.
Thank you, Bex. And thank you so much for inviting me to come on the podcast. So I'm Amy. As Bex said, we work together in recruitment. I've got a full-time career in recruitment, and I also have my own nutrition business side as well. In terms of my background in sabbaticals.
You're a bit of a veteran.
I actually am, and I didn't think I was. And I was thinking, I haven't really taken any sabbaticals. And then the more I thought about it, I've actually taken a few. So, and all for quite different reasons. In my mid-20s, I actually came to Australia for a few weeks on holiday to visit one of my best friends. And she was here traveling. I had best holiday. For me, when I planned it, it was, a once in a lifetime trip to come to Australia. And it was a 3-week holiday. And I tried to cram in as much as possible in case I never ever came to Australia ever again.
Oh, how funny.
Had like the best time ever. I just loved the lifestyle and the weather, and she basically said to me, if you want to come back to Australia, I'll wait for you and we can travel the East Coast together. So I essentially went home. I resigned. I was only a few months in and rented out my apartment, and 3 months later I was back in Australia for again this sort of once in a lifetime trip that was going to be for 6 months and ended up turning into 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I ended up staying. We were backpacking together, we traveled together, and then I just loved Sydney and realised, obviously you only get the working holiday visa once.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm having too much of a great time here to leave. I don't want to give up this sort of opportunity to spend more time in this amazing country. So she left, I stayed, and I ended up getting a role in recruitment and getting sponsored, and the rest was history. I ended up staying for 3.5 years and had a great time, loved my lifestyle here, but I'd never lived in a city close to home. So a few friends of mine had been off traveling South America, and I kind of had the itchy feet again and left my job here and traveled again took about 4 or 5 months off, traveled South America.
On the way home?
Yeah.
Okay.
And New Zealand as well. I spent a month in New Zealand, about 6-8 weeks in South America, time in Miami and New York. Had a great time. Then back to the UK, and I ended up living in Dublin for a while, but I missed ultimately living in Australia, and I missed the lifestyle here. So after a couple of years, I came back. I think probably the most poignant sabbatical for me would be, I was settled back into life in Australia, and I was involved in a really bad motor accident, which sort of turned my world upside down for a period of time. I had been, I was working full time. I was, I suppose the typical work hard, play hard kind of lifestyle then. And I was having a great time. And I went from having this sort of really busy, thriving life to having my world turned upside down. Like I couldn't even leave the house. I unfortunately broke 2 bones in my neck, and I was
Wow.
off work I ended up being about 3.5 months. And I was so desperate that whole time to get back to my full health, get back to my lifestyle, get back to work and just normality. Because I just, I couldn't really do very much for that period of time. I was pretty out of action. I would try my hardest to still socialize because I was just desperate to like get out and see my friends, but it just...
Were you mobile at all?
Yeah, I was very fortunate actually. I was mobile, but I was in a neck brace for 4 months. So I had to have help like showering. My friends, my housemates used to have to shower me, wash my hair, and basically sort of ferrying me around place, to be honest. And
yeah, that lack of independence must be hard.
it was challenging on so many different levels in a way that I'd never sort of encountered before from a health perspective. And I'd always wanted to be sort of relatively healthy, but health hadn't been sort of high on my top of my priority list. But it changed everything, and I desperately wanted to get back to work, and I probably went back to work too soon. And I started, just doing a few hours a day, and it was very much a sort of rehabilitation process. Get back to work full time. Went back to work, and obviously, recruitment is quite a pressure-driven industry, and I think I wasn't. If I look back now, I was taking an insane amount of painkillers. I wasn't sleeping at night, but I was trying to show up and carry on as normal.
Oh, bless you.
And I got to a bit of a breaking point, and I thought it was the environment at work. And on reflection now, it was a combination of things, but very much me actually probably exhausted, overwhelmed, a lot of sort of aftermath in terms of recovery really, and decided perhaps the next right move would be to change jobs. So I was interviewing, found a new job, accepted a job offer, resigned from my role that I had at the time. And as soon as I resigned, I didn't feel this sense of relief that I think I was expecting to feel. And I had accepted verbally another job to start a week or two later.
In the same industry?
In the same industry.
Okay, yeah.
So it was basically swapping like for like, recruiting in a different sector, but essentially, it's still the same.
Same, yeah.
Environment, it's still the same sales targets, it's still the same sort of pressure. And at that moment in time, I just had this really strong gut feeling that I just needed time out, and did what no recruiter should ever do and accept a role and then pull out of that role. But I did literally sort of days after, and I called the company and I explained obviously the reasons, but I felt that sense of relief, and it just felt like the right thing to do. And this was all so unplanned. I had a wedding, I think 3 or 4 months later, booked in. One of my best friends was getting married in Kenya. So that trip was sort of booked and in the diary. And I was kind of like, right, okay, I've got sort of 3 months off, or however long I'm going to take now till after that wedding. And it was winter in Australia as well. So I literally booked a plane ticket to Thailand, my own, and booked into a hotel and took myself off.
Wow.
And it was just what I needed to do at the time. I think I just needed to have quiet time in my life and put myself, it was not that I hadn't been putting myself first, but I think put like some level of recovery and rest first, instead of always trying to get back to the rat race and get back to being a high performer when I was actually completely exhausted, completely burnt out, and hadn't really given myself the time to recover properly during that period of time. And that for me it just felt very freeing. And I think I was very fortunate in that I was in the position to be able to resign from my job on a whim and not have a plan, and then book a nice holiday to Thailand. I think there's something quite freeing about the freedom of resigning, by your own choice. And then having that freedom and flexibility of, wow, this is great. So what am I going to do next? And I feel very grateful to obviously have that choice to have done that.
But I presume that recovering from an accident like that takes energy. So not only were you pushing almost uphill to try and get back to high performance and what you were previous to the accident, but also your body is trying to recover and put itself back together.
Yeah, and I was in a rush to do all of that. And I think there's an element of, my expectations weren't managed very well. well, when I was in hospital. And I remember when it very first happened and the doctor said, "Oh, we're just going to sign you off for 2 weeks." And in my mind, whilst I'd had these quite significant injuries, oh, yeah, 2 weeks, now should be good.
I'll be back. I'll be right as rain.
But it was always this sort of baby step process. They didn't at any point say to me, "You're going to be out of action for at least 4 months.
Yeah.
Like, just settle into it, allow your body to recover." I was always had this expectation of it's just a few more weeks away. And it just dragged on and on. I felt quite far removed from everything from a work perspective and a social perspective. And I was desperately trying to recover as quickly as I possibly could. And I think the sleep deprivation and taking painkillers a lot more than you ordinarily would, like things like that, were the things that actually really took their toll.
So apart from go to Thailand for an amazing holiday, what did you do with those 3 months?
So I had this very on a whim kind of day by day unplanned trip. Then I came back, just took some time out to chill. And I started to think about, okay, what's next? Once the trip to Kenya is done, it's probably time then to get back to work. So I then did spend that time starting to interview and line up then something for when I got back.
And how did getting back into work post that break look like for you? In hindsight, what did you do right, and then what would you have done differently?
Well, there's a couple of things. When I got back, I went into a role full time, and it quickly dawned on me that just because of the nature of my injuries, I actually struggled working like a 50+ hour week, and it wasn't really helpful to my recovery. I stayed in that job for not a huge amount of time. It wasn't the right environment for me, and I ended up then joining another company where I stayed for 7 years. And when I changed roles again, I negotiated a 4-day week.
Okay.
4 days worked really well for me, and that felt physically manageable. 5 just would trigger stuff that weren't helpful to recovery. So I think a key takeaway there was to try not to put my body through as much. I just struggled with sitting at a desk.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, it's very different nowadays, obviously, with the flexibility of working from home and working in office. But back then, obviously, you were in the office Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. till at least 6 p.m. And that was just a little bit too much for me. Having gone through the accident and the recovery period, like I suppose one takeaway was that I really wanted to study nutrition, and I wanted to find a way to make that happen. And I was obviously weighing up, cost of degree and different types of studies versus working and, giving up work. And I was very fortunate that my employers at the time were really supportive. I spoke to them. I said to them, look, I really want to study. And when I first started my degree, I actually did start part-time. I sort of took this proposal to my boss at the time and said to him, how would you feel if I studied full-time, but I still work with you 2-day week, and I will change roles so it works for maybe both of us. I'll do something that requires less of my attention and time that will add benefit to the team. So we landed on a solution, not dissimilar in a way to how you work with us, Bex, that worked really well. And I had the flexibility that as my uni days chopped and changed from term to term, that I could, flex my days.
I love this story because I think even though, technically, is it a career break or a sabbatical?
It wasn't a career break.
No, because of course you're still working, right? And actually working harder than you've probably ever worked before.
Yeah, I was working harder than ever. Yeah.
But what you've done is potentially taken a pause in your career as such, or one career.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Because actually going from a full-blown 360-degree recruiter earning commission to then resourcing
everybody happy.
Yeah.
It was, to me, when I was doing the maths, with the proposal for my boss, it was a better solution for me than like going to work in a shop getting an hourly rate.
Yes.
Or something. But from an income perspective would have generated more for me than that. But it's still, from what I'd been earning to what I then was earning was like poles apart.
Yeah. And also from your skill set of utilizing, we always think about career around sort of, progressing and going to the next promotion and going to the next and climbing the ladder and climbing, that actually is a pause because you are going back to utilizing minimal amounts of your whole toolkit and skill set to be able to then flex breaks, as you say, and really concentrate on your study and getting your degree done in 3 years. So I think the message for the listeners is incredible, because it's around being super creative, around just taking that pause, but not having to totally quit work to go and study, actually having a solution in there and being really proactive around, okay, let me take this as a bit of a pitch to my company and see what they say. And, what's the worst they can say? No, when you do go and then work in a cafe to support yourself through uni and then restart your career, from the beginning. I'm super interested to understand why nutrition. Like, what was it specifically about nutrition, and why did you then want to go and study it?
My very first interest came into nutrition when I was living in Dublin. If I look back, my lifestyle choices probably weren't great necessarily, dietary wise and stuff. When I was younger, I think I was a really fussy eater. I wouldn't opt for healthy food choices, but I didn't see it necessarily as an issue. When I moved to Dublin, I started suffering from adult acne. And, obviously if you go see a dermatologist, the first thing they say is, we want to put you on Roaccutane, and that's a pretty harsh medication. And I don't know why I've never taken Roaccutane, and I just instantly had this, I think the side effects really scared me. And I think I was at a point in my life where I'd moved cities, and I think one of the key side effects is depression. And I'm quite fortunate. I've never sort of really suffered from depression, but I think I was in a real transition phase. And that was I don't know if I was sort of entirely happy with where I was at that stage. And I think that side effect really stuck with me. And I was like, I
don't want this.
I don't want to take something that's going to make me feel low, So I started researching the alternatives, and I came across this book, The Optimum Nutrition Bible, by a guy called Patrick Holford. And I found it so fascinating that you could, really look at diet, nutrients, and how they can really impact your body and your health. Because before that, I'd never really had any big health concerns that I needed to worry about. And I suppose was very fortunate, with my health. But, anyone who's suffered from acne knows how debilitating it can make you feel. And all you want to do is try and find a fix. And that's really sparked my interest in terms of reading and learning. And I knew then for a long time, I really wanted to study nutrition. And I remember when I was in Dublin, I was then looking at, do I go and study in London? Then I wanted to come back to Australia. So I'll just come back to Australia and get settled back in there, and then we'll work out the next plan. But eventually post-accident, I think is when I was like, right, you only get one life, lead it to your best ability and do the things in life that you really want to do. And that thought is what really sort of spurred me on to actually take action to study, because I'd loved it for years. And it's so much detail. And my degree was so much more science heavy than I ever imagined it would be. And it was really hard, but I'm so glad I did it.
This is a nice segue into bringing your expertise into this podcast, because one of the big areas of questions that we always get is around health on a career break and sabbatical. And I think probably the biggest reason behind that is because our normal routine is thrown out of the window. A lot of the time we encourage, sabbatical and career break coaches, we actually encourage that, of throwing the routine out of the window and actually allowing the space for the magic to happen. But of course there are consequences behind that and to that. And last season, we got experts on the podcast around finances, because that was a big piece that we're always asked about is, how do you finance a career break? What are the top tips for saving and things like that? But this season, we're really focusing on that health and wellness piece. And we've had Chantel on, who is a PT and was my marathon coach. She's amazing. And she's given us some top tips for, I suppose, that physical piece of, training, and actually, if you're not going to F45 3 times a week in your normal schedule, like, what can you be doing? But what I'd love to start to explore with you is from the health and nutritional and eating perspective and supplements perspective, like, how can we, when we're taking a break, still be conscious of our health and actually, I suppose, weave it into our career break?
No, definitely. And it's so important, I think. And it also depends so much on someone's reason and the purpose behind why they've taken the sabbatical. Is it driven by health, and are they burnt out and they just need to get back to feeling themselves again? Or, have they just decided that it's time for a break?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if someone is suffering from, say, burnout and they're exhausted, it's really important to sort of focus on the healing journey. And it somewhat depends on routine. I'm quite a routine driven person. And now, even when I go on holidays, I actually love when I'm on holiday that I can have the time to prioritize my 8 hours sleep a night and have time to exercise and have time to eat well and all the things that actually when I'm working my Monday to Friday and I work a bit on weekends and, work long hours, that I always want to prioritize 8 hours sleep. I would tell anybody that is my recommendation, but, life is busy and I honestly struggle to get my 8 hours. So when I'm away, that's a number one priority for me. I'm kind of like, there's no reason when I'm on holiday not to get my 8 hours sleep.
So let's take sleep for a minute. I have always been able to sleep anywhere and get my 8 hours in. However, that has considerably changed the older I've got when I'm not in my own home. When we're traveling, and I think heat is massive for me, I think it really impacts, but also noise. Like, I think I've become a lighter sleeper the older I've got. And therefore, if we're in a room, a hotel room, and I can hear people or the lift or things like that, I'm definitely not sleeping as well. Do you have any top tips for like how to bring on sleep? Or
nutrition plays into sleep as well. So from a nutrition perspective for sleep, you would be thinking about, and everybody's different again, how much beer you're drinking, time of day for coffee. I would always suggest coffees before lunchtime and not trying to avoid coffees in the afternoon. Everybody's got a different processing time to caffeine. I know personally that I'm really sensitive to caffeine. So I do enjoy and like the taste of coffee, but I will only ever order decafs.
Yeah. What about booze as well? Because that's the other one that as I've got older, I've definitely found impacts my sleep. So when we're traveling, of course, we'll have a beer at lunchtime, we'll have a beer in the evening. And then I wonder why I don't sleep as well. And I wonder whether actually that's half of it.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
Damn it.
It's obviously a stimulant, so it will disrupt your sleep. It will impact your ability to fall into that deeper sleep, like the quality sleep, and it will leave you tossing and turning. And it's not uncommon. Like, you could fall into that deep sleep and then you're awake.
Oh my God, that is what I have found when I'm traveling now, is I will hit the pillow and I'll sleep 2 a.m, 2:30 a.m, wired, like totally wired. Do you think I might actually try this when we're traveling this time around? But could you almost treat it like caffeine? So could you almost have, a couple of glasses of wine at lunchtime and then the stimulant has worn off by the time you come to sleep?
Yeah, because it's had more time to work through your system.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Lunchtime drinking next time I'm on my sabbatical and traveling.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the amount you drink will obviously impact that. If you're drinking lots, it's going to have an impact on your ability to get a good sleep.
Although, unfortunately, I have found that mine is becoming less and less and less. So, like, even a couple of beers now, I think impacts, more than it ever did.
Oh, same. Yeah.
Like, which it never, a couple of beers would literally be a breakfast drink. But now not so much. Okay, so sleep massive, and nutrition. Are there any foods that help sleep, like that we could, if we're not in our normal routine, eat?
Yes. Proteins. Tryptophan is part of the process of making melatonin, which will help you sleep. And tryptophan is found in like chicken breast, turkey. Kiwis can help you sleep as well.
Kiwis are amazing.
2 kiwis a day.
Yeah.
But no, some good quality lean proteins, like chicken, like the white proteins, like a chicken or a turkey breast, are really good sources.
Protein?
You would have some, but not. Chicken and turkey would have like the higher source.
Okay. So if you're choosing a stir fry, if you're in Asia, or meat to eat if you're in South America, chicken and turkey for the sleep perspective and nutrition is top.
Yeah, and just, it's obviously try and have a well-balanced diet as well when you're traveling, and not eating big, heavy meals late in the evening. that doesn't help you sleep, because your body is still trying to digest the food.
No.
So it's trying to keep an element of, the freedom to be able to go out for dinner, but having your schedule not change like dramatically from day to day.
That's the beauty of almost not having a routine, right? Like, you think about the fact that if we're at work, we don't normally have a big lunch because we're at work and we're grabbing a sandwich on the way, but actually the beauty of having a sabbatical or time off is potentially could do that. Sit down, have a long lunch like French. And I have to say, we went out with French friends on Sunday. And it's so not like us. We are breakfast, lunch, dinner, like kind of people. This was a sort of buffet lunchtime, and so I said to Tim, I can't eat breakfast, like I there's no way I'll be hungry because it's really early, it's like midday, and so I didn't have breakfast. We sat for 4 hours over this dinner, and of course you don't fancy dinner, there's no way I could have eaten again at 7 o'clock, but I slept so well because I presume it's in the middle of the day, you have a big feed, and then that's it, one big feed a day.
And particularly if you're grazing as well, your blood sugars are not going up and down because you're sort of constantly full.
Yeah, so true.
And if you've had some carbs, carbs will help you sleep as well.
Carbs will help you sleep. Ah, interesting. Why do we hate on carbs so much then?
I don't know. I think carbs get a really bad rap. I think, it comes from demonizing, I suppose it's processed foods, which are ultra processed, high carb type of foods. And, there's an element to, the impact on your blood sugar levels, but it depends what type of carbs you're aiming for, chocolate bar versus like some potatoes. Potatoes get really deep, but I have no concern eating potatoes. And obviously everything in moderation and balance, it's about portion size more than anything. And carbs, I think, get demonized from a processed food perspective, like pastries and all the stuff that
white bread
will leave you craving more of the same, because it will impact your blood sugar levels and your energy, because you'll get those spikes, which is what leads to more cravings.
That is my biggest takeaway from your 4-week program. For everybody listening, we'll put the link to Amy's 4-week program in the show notes, but it is an incredible program. I think I've said this a few times on the podcast, but I now look at my balance over a year, because actually my lifestyle and how I've chosen to live is not conducive to finding balance every day or over a week or a month or whatever. And so it really is over 365 days. I go, have I spent the time that I wanted to spend with my favorite people? Like, have I been where I wanted to be? Have I lived how I want to live over 365 days? And so I came back from Asia, as Amy will know, in April, and was 6 kg heavier than I had left France, and felt shit as well. Like, I just felt lethargic. I felt as though I'd eaten all the good or bad things, drunk all the good or bad things. And I think 2 weeks in Italy to sort of finish our traveling probably didn't help. I did religiously the 4-week program, and my 2 biggest takeaways from it, one was portion size and the way that you encourage us to batch cook and cook. What's your motto? Cook once, eat twice. Like, I
cook once, eat twice. Yeah,
I loved it, because actually I would cook once and then consume the whole thing. But if you know that you're cooking once and eating twice, you're actually eating into next day's portion, so you know that you're going to have less for the next day. So it's the psychology behind, like, it's so clever. So I think it's the portion size you mentioned. It's so, it's been game changer for me, and the protein has. And I think the protein has from a sleep perspective for me, and just for not eating as much. So feeling fuller.
Yeah. And I think that's my other key tip, really. If you're on the move, if you're at home or on the move, to start the day with a really good, with high protein.
Yeah, okay.
That sets you up really well. There's a lot of scientific research to show that if you have a high protein breakfast, it reduces your cravings later in the day. So ultimately, you'll end up consuming less calories. Same with sleep, actually. If you've had a good sleep, there's a lot of research behind that. So you change the foods that you choose to opt for the next day, which again, back to calorie intake. But setting yourself up with a really great breakfast, aiming for like 30 grams protein, is like ideal. So whether you're, staying in an Airbnb, you're at home, you're in a hotel, obviously not everybody eats eggs, but eggs are a really great, easy source of protein. The hotel omelette is a great one. And try and opt for some really good savories in your breakfast to try and get to that 30 grams of protein. Now, it depends on what your food choices are, but some people could add some cheese to that or some cold meats, protein smoothies. Now I appreciate obviously not all hotels and things have the equipment that you'd be just whipping up a smoothie. If I was traveling for the long term, I would probably be tempted, to buy one of those portable blenders. Have you seen those?
No.
It's like, like a water bottle, but with a blender on the bottom.
That needs electric?
No, I think they're battery powered.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, clever.
So you could have that on the move nowadays.
And I have to say, that's been the other thing that has been a game changer. I didn't really eat breakfast, as you know, and the protein shakes that I now incorporate, like, I'm obsessed with them. And the chocolate one tastes as though it's a chocolate milkshake. So it's a cacao, but it just tastes so good.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think, I love smoothies just, during the busy work week, because it's a really practical, easy breakfast that I can take and know that I'm getting my 30 grams of protein. And it genuinely helps you to stay feeling full.
Yeah.
Versus if you just had a slice of toast and jam. There's a vast difference in how you will feel and how you will choose other food choices throughout the day. It's really important. Protein and fiber are my kind of two macros that I really put a lot of weight in terms of their importance. I think fiber is amazing for our gut health, which again, if you're traveling and you're going to different countries and you're trying different cuisines, inevitably people do pick up things that can impact their gut health. So yeah, just keeping up that fiber intake with breakfast, but also the protein element as well.
And where do you get fiber from? What's the easiest, like, if you're not in your routine to get fiber?
Fruit, vegetables, and whole grains. So I think from a breakfast perspective, if you're having some fruit, you could add, some apples, some pear. I love berries. So if I'm traveling, it's kind of the same, but I would often, there's only so much you can take eggs, and I already fill it up with supplements, which we can get to in a minute. But I will often have a big bag of like mixed nuts so that I just know that if I just need something, I have something and it's healthy, and I'm not having to just go to a shop and buy something that I don't want to have.
And that's not healthy. Yeah. So it eliminates that choice that you would maybe have to make. So you touched on supplements, but what are your recommended supplements for individuals to feel healthy and be healthy?
I've got a few that I love, and love them so much that if I was going away, if I go on holiday, I pack my suitcase full of bits and pieces,
like a Mary Poppins bag
to take with me. It is a bit. Magnesium comes with me everywhere, and it's either in a small tub or you can, some brands where you can get like the little individual sachets.
Yeah.
So I would, take one or the other. I am pretty compliant to taking that one. It's a really, I suppose it's a very ingrained habit for me now to just have that before bed. Collagen. I love collagen supplements. Now, I wouldn't say it's essential for people to travel with collagen supplements. I just love the scientific research behind collagen. And again, just for me, it's a consistent part of my routine. I take a powder here, but when I travel, I just take like liquid sachets. So it's super easy. I suppose I take it as a vanity supplement, actually, because it's a beauty supplement. There's lots of research to prove that it reduces fine lines, wrinkles.
Well, we all need that.
Increased skin hydration and elasticity. So, I try to keep that one very consistent. My other non-negotiable now, which if I was going to take only one thing, that would probably be this, is creatine.
Wow. Okay.
I take creatine daily, and I've only started taking creatine really this year, but there's so much more research and it's all quite emerging and new. But, whilst it provides energy to our muscles, which for, gym purposes and strength training purposes, it can help. But it also gives energy to our brains, which is why I like it. It's not like a wildly noticeable difference. It's not like, if you drink a coffee, feel your caffeine kind of kicking in. It's nothing like that at all. But I do feel like in the afternoon, particularly being in the sort of perimenopause phase of life, the tiredness that kicks in, I feel like it really sort of plateaus that out. Okay. So I just, from a performance, at work or, just concentration, brain energy, focus, I find it really beneficial. I also know that I'm not probably going to sit and mix it up in water every morning because I want something that's easier. So actually for this last trip I went on, I bought some creatine gummies.
Okay.
The other one I think is really important when you're traveling is a probiotic. And that comes from obviously just looking after our gut health. And again, people when they're on holidays, you may not have as much fruit or as much veg as you might ordinarily have. Or if you're, in a Bali or somewhere where there's more susceptible to illnesses. And I think, having a probiotic to help manage your gut health whilst you're traveling is always really helpful. And I suppose my key ones out of that list would probably be creatine, probiotics, magnesium I love.
And the probiotic, is that things like Yakult? Because
Yes,
that is everywhere.
yes.
When you go travelling, all the way through Asia, everywhere in Europe, you've got the Yakult and now the kefir. And so actually, you know, you don't really need to take it with you.
I would take a capsule.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
With a probiotic, like as a powder. But you could take things like a Yakult stuff. It's basically just adding beneficial bacteria to your gut.
And I think the good thing is to have the framework and listen to a specialist like you say, these would be my top 3. And then us to take it on board to do the research on how. Because I am so going to listen back and think about how I prepare for our next 2-3 months of travel. So amazing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
A couple of quick fire questions. The first one, what do you value now that you didn't before your career breaks or sabbaticals?
Probably health.
Obviously.
I don't know if it was influenced by the sabbaticals, but I think my approach to a sabbatical now would be very different.
Yeah.
And I would take the time to really value the things that we talked about.
And I think actually it's an obvious one, right? Like your biggest impactful sabbatical came off the back of your health being nearly taken away from you for a period of time.
Yeah.
And what about a watch, read or listen recommendation for the audience?
I have been listening a lot lately to the Aspire with Emma Greed podcast. I love listening to it. She has some great guests, but she's very entrepreneurial. And I love hearing how founders have created their businesses, how they've grown and their journeys.
And I'm going to delve into that later. You've given the audience so much food for thought, but what would be your absolute non-negotiable 3 top tips for anybody taking a career break or thinking about embarking on one?
Obviously, I would, look at how you can improve your health during your break and how you can create habits that you may not have had before, and to try to take the time to create habits that you instill to take with you for the future.
Oh, I love that. And if anybody wants to get in touch or buy the program or utilize your knowledge, where best to find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Amy Savage Nutrition, and my website as well, amysavagenutrition.com. And if anyone has got any questions, feel free to send me a message.
Brilliant. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes. But personally, I can highly recommend the 4-week signature program. Honestly, I felt like a different person and it's changed my habits since. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I tell you what, I'll do a code for you that you can share in the
for our
notes.
Listeners.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you. So a little gift for them as well. Thank you for coming on. Lovely to see you. You take care.
Thanks for having me.
And a heart full of soul, it's connected. And I'm moving along, I won't let it out.
Thank you so much for listening, and a huge thank you to Amy for sharing her multiple sabbatical stories and, of course, her nutritional expertise. Amy's story reminds us that a career break can take many different forms, and with a little creativity, it can become the vehicle that creates space for something new. If you'd like to create with Amy, you can find her via the links in the show notes. As always, a massive thanks to Auntie Bea at the Flaxon, my incredible patient and talented producer, to Nikki Sweetland, our brilliant creative force behind all things social and visual, and to Joe Cook, whose soulful vocals we're lucky to feature throughout this podcast. If you loved this episode and know somebody who'd love it too, please do send it their way. Share the link, pop it in a group chat or forward to a friend that's always talking about quitting their job. And please also do us a massive favour, hit follow, give the show a rating or leave a quick review, or all of them. It genuinely makes a huge difference and helps more people discover these powerful sabbatical stories. The more we share them, the more we normalise taking brave, intentional breaks. And if you've got a sabbatical story of your own or know but somebody who does, please do reach out. I'm Bex Thomas on LinkedIn and we're Sabbatical Stories Podcast on Instagram. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep dreaming big, and remember, your sabbatical story might just be waiting to be written.